All right, welcome back, listeners. This is another episode of Health Without the System. I'm Dr. Tim Scott.
And I'm Mia Scott. Welcome back for all of our first-time listeners. Welcome for the first time, and buckle up.
Yep, let's have some fun tonight. This is a good one. We've had a lot of questions, and I actually get people asking me about this all the time in the emergency department, so I look forward to talking about it.
Yep, it is the science of hydration, what your body actually does with water, why it's needed, is, what's too much, what's too little, what it does with your cells, all of the things.
Yes, and before we get started today, we're just going to play a little game called Hydration Myths. I'm going to throw out some common hydration advice people hear all the time, and Mia, you tell me if it's true or nonsense.
Okay.
Sound like
good.
a game?
Sounds like a fun game.
Okay, myth number 1, you should drink 8 glasses of water per day.
Mostly myth. And, this was actually never based on good science. Hydration needs vary, based on body or your body size, your activity level, how much you're sweating, the climate that you live in, the diet that you're eating, how much protein you eat. So many deciding factors. So someone, working outside in July is obviously going to need significantly more water than somebody who is in the winter, in December, working in an office setting. So very important when context matters.
I agree. And also, what is a glass? That's the same thing like when people in the ER say, I drink 1 beer a day, but it's an 80-ounce beer. Right. So anyway, what's the size of the glass? Yeah, I think it's better to know your ounces. I mean, really, I tell people they should aim for a half ounce per body weight, half ounce of water per body weight. Sure. But really, go for 60, 70, 80 ounces of water, a little bit more depending on what you do. Minimum should be 60.
Yeah, so think of, if you're 200 pounds, that's 100 pounds or 100 ounces of water a day. So just some basic math there. Whatever your body weight is, cut it in half, and that is how many ounces you should be drinking. Now, in contract to that, like when someone's saying, I'm drinking, X amount of glasses a day, like Tim said, do you know how many ounces are in whatever glass that you're choosing out of your pantry, and are you really keeping score? So I really tell all of our patients to make sure you have a thermos that has how many ounces are on it. That way you know how many ounces or how many thermoses you have to drink in that day.
Agreed. And it also, what you're drinking out of matters.
100%.
Right? So this is stainless steel. On the inside, it's marked 40 ounces. Yep. I know that I need to get through a couple of these every day.
Yep. Stainless steel, glass, copper. Those should be your go-tos.
Not the plastic.
Yeah. If you are drinking out of plastic water bottles, just throw those
stop.
Right out the window.
And, we actually don't go into this. This is probably more of like a toxins episode, but just real quick, let's mention it. Plastic water bottles for the birds, the water in them, probably for the birds too. People all the time tell me like, yep, got my case of water at Costco or whatever. And I'm like, oh, cool. Can you return it? Because let's just get a filter. We'll talk about that this episode, and let's drink at home.
And just to piggyback off of that, for the microplastic water bottle, they have done studies on this, and per water bottle with all of the name brand companies. They did not disclose some of these names in the study because of legality issues, but no, it was your top at least 10 brands. So you know that they're going to be hitting most of them. Every single water bottle contained a couple 100,000 microplastics per water bottle, and those are found in the brain. They're doing post-op studies or post-mortem studies on brain and seeing microplastics in the brain. So for you people who listen to us,
not just the brain, everywhere, but definitely
correct.
in the brain.
But the brain is a big issue, obviously. It's forever. It doesn't, easily get out of your body. And shout out to my mom, who forever ago used to tell me all the time when I would carry around my water bottles in my car, it's a hot day, don't drink that. It's leaching in there. And to me, I was like, oh, whatever. Well, now it turns out mama's right, and studies back that up, and just don't drink your water bottles.
Yeah, I really didn't know that till a few years ago. I was just pounding the water bottles.
We are up to a credit card a week in microplastics of consumption, whether that is what we are eating, what we are surrounding ourselves with, environment, the packaged things that are food comes in. So limit your exposure when you can.
Tupperware in the microwave, all that
controllable.
Stuff. Agreed.
So,
all right, that's not what we're talking about today. Myth number 2, if you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated.
So this one's partially true. Thirst is controlled by the hypothalamus in your brain, and it triggers by changes in blood osmolarity. So basically the concentration of sodium in your blood, that's what kind of stimulates whether you get that trigger of I'm thirsty or not. And the catch is that thirst is often lagged slightly behind dehydration. So the theory is that if you're saying, my gosh, I'm really thirsty, chances are you're already in a dehydrated state, and it's time to drink some water a little sooner than what your body just triggered you to drink.
So basically thirst is helpful, but it's not a perfect early warning system. You got to pay attention to the other cues, what you're doing, things like that. Myth number 3, coffee dehydrates you.
Mostly myth. Now, I'm biased because I love my coffee, but coffee's about 98% water. So, yes, you're getting water into that. And it does contribute as your hydration because, in theory, it's mostly
It's
water.
a lot of water.
Yes, it is. It's majority water. And caffeine does have a mild diuretic effect. But the thing is that regular coffee drinkers, like if you're what I would say chronically drinking coffee, you're going to be used to this diuretic effect and it's going to have a little bit less of an impact on you. So, obviously, if you're in a dehydrated state, no, your first thirst quencher isn't going to be a cup of coffee, but it's not necessarily a dehydration state. It also depends on what you put in it. The more sugar that you put in it, those more caramels, syrups, salts, those are going to be, of course, stimulating that thirst trigger
and dehydrating you more
even
to
more.
process
Yes,
it.
yes.
And we actually go into that a little bit later this episode.
Yep.
So yes, coffee does count towards hydration, but it probably shouldn't be your main hydration strategy. Not a good way to go about it. Myth number 4, sports drinks are the best way to hydrate.
And not at all. Most commercial drinks are basically just sugar water and they add a little bit of sodium in it so they can say, here's some electrolytes.
Yeah.
You know, if you're talking about like an elite endurance, runner or triathlon or even kiddos that are in very, vigorous sports that are sweating really bad.
Like the day of the event.
Correct.
Not necessarily like when you're doing it. So the 10-mile run, the 15-mile run, but not the I'm just working out at the gym today kind of thing.
Yes, perfect example there. So when you're physically actually doing something, like if you're, coming off the field and you're stripping sweat and you're still going to be active during a game or marathon, whatever that is, that immediate glucose response is needed for that muscle. Remember, muscle takes the first glucose of, uptake. It's a big fuel for your muscle, and that can help you thrive during that activity. But when you're done, like you're not just going to slam a big thing of Gatorade and think that it's going to hydrate you. It's actually the opposite with how much sugar content is in there. So during a very vigorous activity, sure, I can probably argue a case, but in theory, is there significantly much better things than that? Yes. So no bueno on the Gatorade.
For everyday hydration, let's just go with plain water, maybe with some electrolytes, which we will talk about in this episode, works best.
Mm-hmm.
All right, myth 5, clean urine means perfect hydration.
Also a myth.
Clear urine.
Yes, clear urine. Also a myth there. Completely clear urine where it's almost looking like, did you even pee in the toilet? That is a typical sign that you are overhydrating and you are diluting your electrolytes in your body. So not necessarily a good goal, but you have to find your happy medium.
Right. You're basically aiming for pale yellow straw-colored urine, not crystal clear. Crystal clear too often means overhydration.
Yeah, and not too dark where you are, dehydrated.
Yes, and myth number 6, you cannot drink too much water.
Yes, you can. Now, is the average American likely drinking too much water? Probably not, but you can drink massive amounts of water, and if you don't have electrolytes in that, you can dilute your sodium levels in the blood, and that is a condition called hyponatremia, so you do not want to have low sodium.
And hyponatremia is actually a serious condition.
Yep.
As the lower the sodium gets, the higher your risk for seizures. Yep. You can also have brain swelling or herniation. It's actually a real thing, and you really can't play any of these. I've seen some games or some challenges in the past.
I was just about to say that. A couple years ago, they were doing these gallon challenges where they would chug like gallons and gallons of water, and people have literally died
is dangerous.
From
that is
because
legit
of
dangerous.
the low sodium. The dilution.
So you can drink too much water. I usually tell people if you're doing aggressive hydration for anything, try to do 1-to-1. Let's say you drink 20 ounces of free water. For your next 20 ounces, throw some salt or some electrolytes in it. And again, we'll talk about it some more.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Good myths.
So hydration turns out to be way more complicated than just drinking water. And
yeah, there's just so much that go into play with that. So hydration is really about not only fluid balance, but your electrolyte balance, your hormones, and how your cells are actually regulating that water. Remember, your body runs in this massive homeostasis. Not a single organ functions in isolation. Same thing with fluid. It relies on a lot of complex systems in the body to make sure that things are functioning properly. A smooth oiled machine.
Okay, so for the rest of this episode, let's break down the physiology of hydration, what your body actually needs water for, why some drinks hydrate you better than others, like we just sort of went over with the myths, and what electrolytes are really doing inside your cells.
Yeah, and everyone thinks that hydration is just drinking more water and that's it. But really, hydration is a biochemical process in your body that involves your brain, kidneys, hormones, electrolytes, and even your muscles. It has a lot to do with that.
Yes, and your favorite part, let's just do a couple stats. Yep. These aren't the craziest things, but good to know.
I think most of us know that when we say we're 90% water, that's our blood plasma. So our blood plasma is 90% water. And then humans themselves are about 60% water. And then your brain is about 73% water. So breaking that down, yes, we are a majority of water.
Agreed. And when you think about hydration, it's not really just how much water you drink. It's about things like absorption, right? Water has to be absorbed through the small intestines and go into the bloodstream in order to be used by your body. And that process is actually driven by the sodium and glucose transporters that pull water along with them. You also have distribution. So once it's absorbed, water has to be distributed throughout the circulatory system. So it can move between the blood, interstitial fluid, which is sort of those spaces between the cells, and then the inside of cells where a lot of those metabolic reactions actually occur. We talk about the mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell. And guess what? The cell needs to be hydrated so it's not just this shriveled up little raisin.
Yeah.
There's also
electrolytes. Yeah. Electrolytes play a huge role in that, like sodium, potassium, magnesium. They act as basically charged particles that controls when or what water moves in and out of the body and cells. And it also allows nerves to function, muscle to function properly. So if you have an imbalance of some of these are the main electrolytes that we're talking about. And when you have an imbalance of this, you can have a pretty big disruption of body, depending on what organ and things. I mean, so many organs rely on these electrolytes to function.
Agreed. Hydration is also about hormones, vasopressin, which is ADH, aldosterone, and then the whole angiotensin system involved in that constantly adjusts the water and sodium that the kidneys retain or excrete in order to keep the fluid balance stable. And then, of course, there is the cellular balance, which we talked about at the cellular level. Hydration is about maintaining an osmotic balance so that water moves in and out of cells correctly without causing them to shrink or swell to a point where they will lose function. So it's really not just the water you drink. It's a whole metabolic factory going on inside your body.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too simple anymore. So what do we need? What do we actually need water for? So,
geez, I don't know.
People think it's just, let's just quench my thirst. I'm feeling a little thirsty. I know I need water. And it's crazy to me when I hear patients say, I don't drink water. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do you drink? I'm like, I don't even know that that's possible. Like your poor cells.
Like, no, you do. You need water.
Yeah, you're
going to need that.
For sure.
It's involved in nearly every physiologic process in your body. We just mentioned circulation, metabolism, brain function, temperature regulation. The sweat that comes out of you needs to evaporate to cool us. It all depends on water and osmotic gradients.
Yeah, so let's break this a little bit down into
Let's do the physiology first.
Category. Yeah, let's break it down. So number one, like Tim just mentioned here, circulation. So blood plasma, it's a liquid portion of your blood, and that is, like we said, mostly water.
93%, right?
Yeah. And that fluid allows your blood to flow easily through arteries and capillaries. So oxygen and glucose, hormones, nutrients, they all reach the destinations that it needs to go to, aka your tissues, in order to function. So in theory to that, when you become dehydrated, your blood volume will drop and the blood becomes more concentrated. And think of this almost like even like a sticky. They're not able to do their job. So they can slow their circulation. They can make your heart work harder to maintain your blood pressure. And then, of course, your cells are struggling. They're, shriveled and depleted of the nutrients that they need.
Yeah, water is just kind of like present in the body, and it's allowing, think of like delivery trucks to carry oxygen, nutrients, and reach every different cell. It's sort of just the network that everything needs to flow. So if hydration drops, this traffic sort of slows and the deliveries get delayed.
Yeah. I think of it like we mentioned like a highway system for this as a analogy where, water is the traffic flow and it allows the delivery trucks, like Tim said, to get your destination. But in my mind, I almost think of this as like a lazy river water, where if you're sitting in an inner tube, that's the cell, and your water is, going by. And if there's no water in the lazy river, y'all are just like sitting there like, I can't really get to where I'm going. So that's my theory or my analogy in my brain when I think about the plasma and what it does to shuttle things around in our body.
Exactly. And if it can't get, and we'll get to this, but if it can't get to where you go, then the body, different parts of the body can't get done what they need to do. And hence you'll start to feel the effects. And we'll get to that. Another important one though, like we mentioned, if we're talking physiologically, is temperature regulation. Your body cools itself primarily through sweating. So sweat evaporates from the skin. It carries heat away from the body. And this helps your core temperature reduce and stay stable. If hydration's low, the body produces less sweat and cooling becomes much less effective. So this can cause the core temperature to raise, and even things like exercise performance or just standard activity of daily living performance to drop. Even 1% to 2% dehydration can significantly reduce physical performance. And this is why you will see elite athletes and even non-elite athletes so focused on hydration.
Yeah. And then number 3 is cellular metabolism, which is something that we always tell our patients. We're always preaching about metabolic effects on the body, which is why like I don't have time to explain all this to a patient. So I say, please just drink, half your body weight in ounces to maintain cellular function. Like that's how I say it to patients. But what does that mean? Well, nearly every chemical reaction in the body occurs through a water-based environment. And obviously that's important. It needs that to happen. So water allows enzymes to function properly and helps transport nutrients like glucose, amino acids, and electrolytes into the cell. And so inside the cell, you have that supportive process of the ATP production in the mitochondria. Remember, ATP, powerhouse of this, or the energy of that's your energy production. It's your body's fuel.
ATP is your body's form of currency.
Yeah, of just how you run, and which is, yeah, exactly like Tim said. It's basically how you generate energy. And your cells are essentially microscopic, water-filled environments that thousands of chemical reactions are happening all the time, every single second. So if you're lacking this, you're in trouble. So think of this like cell factories. So water is the fluid environment where the machine runs, and without enough water, the assembly line will slow down. So continue to think of those little analogies to make that stick in your brain.
Yeah, I agree.
And speaking of your brain.
Speaking of the brain, I mean, we mentioned the brain is 73% water, so even mild dehydration can affect how it functions. Small shifts in the hydration can affect not only the neurotransmitters, but the blood flow. And then we've also mentioned in the past that whole sort of lymphatic flow throughout the brain too. That's all dependent on water. And like we said before, even very tiny microscopic changes, 1 to 2% dehydration, can reduce things like attention, reaction time, memory, and mood, which is why dehydration often shows up as fatigue, irritability, or brain fog. We spent so much time in other episodes talking about things like hormones causing fatigue, irritability, brain fog, your diet, your sleep, but your hydration plays a role too. And it's really... As you get more in tune with this, as you learn more of these things, it's almost like you can kind of go through this checklist. Like when you're off, when you're feeling short, when you can't recall words, when you're not at your best, it's like, okay, my food, my sleep, my water, you just kind of run through these things.
I just did this today. I had such a crazy day, and it was about noon, and I was like looking around for my thermos, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even make my water. And every morning I have a massive thermos with my creatine, my electrolytes, and I'm like, no wonder. And it was just a crazy day, and my body could feel it. And it's exactly like Tim said. I went through that checklist, and I was like, oh my gosh, my water, it's missing. Makes a huge difference. Next thing that it does is detoxification and waste removal, which obviously is so freaking important. I will argue that this is one of the most important things that our body has the ability to do. So obviously, if that is impaired, you're going to have a buildup these detoxifying properties in our body and waste, and then that is no good. I mean, large symptoms all the way to potential cancer. So your kidneys filter about 150 to 180 liters of blood plasma every single day.
That's crazy. That's like 90 2-liter bottles.
Think about that, like filling up 90, like all of
like
those
92 liter Coca-Cola bottles and running that. That's what your kidneys filter every day.
That's just how much it goes through every single day. And it obviously needs good cellular or good fluid function to make that happen. And those kidneys remove waste products like urea, creatinine, excess electrolytes, all of the waste products, the toxic chemicals and exposures that we're eating, maybe toxic things in our food. And water will help dilute this process where the substances can be safely removed out and excreted from the body. And when hydration status is low, the urine can become incredibly concentrated, and the kidneys have to work significantly harder. Remember, think about oil to a machine. It's not able to fully function and work smoothly. And obviously, you're going to have an increased risk of kidney stones, kidney issues, renal impairment, detoxification pathways blocking or backing up. Very, very important.
And then that can affect other parts of the body.
Yeah. So think of this as like your kidneys are a filtration system in like a fish tank.
Just think of looking at the whole fish tank in general. Like normally it should be nice, clear water and everyone's swimming around happy. Your kidneys are filtering, just like the filter in there. But if it's blocked or if the water's not flowing good enough or the water levels are low,
you're going to have floating fish. Like that's just how
cloudy,
it's
green, algae, nasty. That's what happens in your blood. That's called uremia. And that can significantly affect your cognition, like your ability to think, your movement. You can become ataxic. And we see this a lot with elderly people when they get really dehydrated.
And disoriented and lose their mind. This brings me back to, we sauna a lot. We have our own sauna in the house. And this reminds me of like when I'm in the sauna, like on my sauna days, I will probably drink triple the amount of water. And when I'm in the sauna and done, it's probably like double right there in the sauna because I'm just so thirsty because my detoxifying properties are working in overdrive. I'm sweating massively. I need to replace that and replenish that. My body is working really hard to detox and sweat. Sweat is one of the biggest ways that we can, one of the organs that we can detox is actually our skin with those particles. And it just reminds me of like making sure that I'm keeping that machine running. So this is exactly why if you're sweating really hard, if you're doing these endurance exercises, if you're in the sauna and sweating extra, please replenish that fluid because your body needs that to work extra hard to get all of those that waste removal gone.
Agreed. All right, so let's move past physiology and let's talk just a little bit about like what's happening in life. You know, what happens when you're chronically dehydrated. I mean, I think it's fair to say most people are not severely dehydrated, but a lot of us probably live with chronic underhydration. And some things to recognize, you know, we mentioned this, but like mild dehydration, you know, 1 to 2%. It's some simple symptoms. You might feel a little bit more fatigue. You might notice some brain fog, maybe irritability, or another poor exercise tolerance.
Poor exercise,
like thinking
for sure.
my run sucks
Exactly.
today.
That's exactly
my
what I was gonna
walk,
go to.
my workout.
Yep.
I've had that. How many days have you had that where you're out there running?
Yeah.
Like one
And
day
you're
you
like,
feel like
"Son
you
of
could
a
run.
gun, I knew I didn't
Yeah,
drink enough water."
exactly.
Your calves tighten up. You become more cramping.
And you're just like, I'm not going to get anywhere
Exactly.
today.
You know it's just going to be a crap run because you didn't, pregame with your hydration status. So
And-
it really makes a difference.
And even more of a moderate dehydration, like 4 to 5% dehydrated, that's when you're going to start to actually see more of those classic symptoms. Tachycardia, you might feel your
Elevated
heart
heart
beating
rate, yep.
fast, getting a little bit dizzy or feeling a little loopy, decreased urine output. Geez, I haven't really gone to the bathroom much. When I do, it's yellow and stinky.
Yep.
And here's another one, constipation. How often do we
Huge.
talk to our patients about how important hydration is for regular bowel movements?
Yep. And once again, that's what comes right after the sentence when I say for basic cellular functioning and for bowel, support. Very, very important. Just fuel your cells. And this is the physiology behind it.
Yeah.
Why
And this
important it is.
chronic underhydration, in addition to those symptoms that tell you in real time, can lead to long-term things. We mentioned the constipation, and that's a big one. So many people forget to focus on hydration. They just jump right to like Miralax, stool softeners, but your diet, your hydration. Anyway, kidney stones, migraines, fatigue, impaired metabolism, we kind of talked about. You're going to have more likely to develop insulin resistance over time, altered fasting glucose levels, even your lipid levels.
Yeah.
And then poor temperature tolerance. If you always are feeling hot or cold, think hydration as well. Now, that's not the only thing. It's like a checklist. There's many other things. People jump to thyroid first and foremost, which is important, your adrenals, but also hydration.
Yeah, absolutely. But an interesting point to mention is your thirst systems are regulated by several physiological signals, like several.
But as we mentioned, it's not. Yeah.
It's not perfectly sensitive or immediate responses. So take that into consideration. Like we said, if you're thinking that you're thirsty and your body's telling you you're thirsty, chances are you were thirsty hours ago. Your body's just catching up to that signal. But that primary trigger is that plasma osmolarity. So so when which basically refers to that concentration of your blood.
Yeah.
So
Sodium, glucose, and your hydration levels all play the most major roles in that, but they signal the hypothalamus. And this is the region that controls the fluid balance. So at the same time, if these fluid or these blood pressure, or if the fluid falls and then of course your blood pressure starts to fall, then you actually activate a whole nother system, that renin-angiotensin system. And this produces angiotensin 2, and it's a hormone that constricts blood vessels and strongly stimulates thirst. So that's why we're saying it's not perfect. By the time you feel really thirsty, you're already past the initial osmolality signal to the hypothalamus. You've now activated the renin-angiotensin system, and your body's kind of like, uh-oh, we got some stuff to do here.
Yeah. And think about that, like I always think about this system as like a garden hose, where if you have like the perfect hose, it's a nice flow. But when your pressure of the hose is not there, aka your blood pressure, when you're not drinking enough and you're hypotensive, then your arteries and they're gonna constrict to have more pressure get to where it's going. So think of your thumb at the end of the hose. When you constrict that flow, vasoconstriction via a hose, you're going to send that stream out a lot more powerful. So that's exactly like what our body does. When it senses those low states and you're like, we need to perfuse our organs, but you're not very hydrated, it works on these other systems to get that pressure up via that vasoconstriction. So
and then you might start to see other
remarkable.
things, hypertension.
Exactly. Hypertension. And then like Tim said, migraines, because you're vasoconstricting. Think of all those tiny, tiny, tiny little vessels in your brain that when you become vasoconstricted, those clamp down even more. Now you can have some headache issues. So I say this all the time. Our body is just so incredibly complex and it knows what it's doing. We just have to understand our cues and support it in the best environment that we can.
Absolutely. All right, we mentioned this earlier about the sugary drinks. So why don't sugary drinks hydrate well? Let's go into this. I think this is probably relevant to most of our listeners' lives. And we mentioned it in the myths, so let's talk about it just a bit. We mentioned osmolality. We'll just bring it up again real quick because it does apply to this here. Your body regulates the concentration of fluids very tightly. Blood osmolality, and just for any of our geeks out there, it's about 285, 295 milliosmoles per kilogram. So if you're measuring this or you're one of those people, that's a number that you're looking for. Sugary drinks, soda, sweet tea, juice, sports drinks that have a bunch of sugar in it are very high osmolality. When a drink is concentrated with sugar, the body has to pull water in the gut to dilute it before you can absorb it. So a high osmolar drink like that needs to get diluted before we can actually absorb it. So instead of hydrating you quickly, it's a very delayed dehydration. There's systems that need to be activated and things that need to happen to lead to actual hydration.
Yeah, and one specific sugar that we can talk about is the fructose metabolism, which a lot of times they can be in some of these very high. It's basically the main source. Yeah,
fructose, high fructose corn syrup.
Correct. Yeah, and when you see fructose and it doesn't have a high fructose, in front of it, it's essentially the same thing. It's just processed a smidgen differently.
Yeah,
but this is
generally fructose is something you want to stay away from. Of course, it is in fruit. That's a different story.
It's wrapped with fiber, antioxidants.
There are some things to talk about with it, but that's a different episode. As a matter of fact, we should do a fructose episode in fruit because that's just such an important topic. But anyway, the point is, when you see it on a drink label, it's not good.
No, basically. Not at all. No,
in any form. High fructose corn syrup, fructose, other words, anything you see, not good.
Yep. And that's the main ingredient, like Tim said. So, but unlike glucose, which can be used by almost every cell in the body, fructose is primarily metabolized in the liver. So completely different organ taking that on. And when large amounts of fructose arrive at the liver all at once, because obviously you're chugging this, drinking this, it's a big blast, like from, soda, sweet tea, etc. The liver has to rapidly convert this into metabolic intermediates, so which use cellular ATP. They basically use up some of the energy in the body, and they can generate this uric acid as a byproduct.
Real quick, important point, generates uric acid as a byproduct. So one of the labs that we like to do on our comprehensive metabolic panels when we're really kind of diving into different systems with our patients is a uric acid. And people will often ask me, why did you test that? Do you think I have gout? And my answer to that is no. What I'm actually doing is I'm kind of testing the exhaust of your engine. And when you're making a lot of uric acid, when that's the byproduct of metabolism, then you're not having efficiency. You're probably having too much oxidation, maybe too much glycation. There's a lot of different things happening, but uric acid is an important one there. And like Mia said, it's a byproduct of the fructose metabolism.
Yeah, and uric acid, it's one of those things that has to be in that perfect homeostasis. Too low, no good. Too high, no good.
Right.
And it's actually incredibly beneficial for the body when it maintains that. But when it's high, we can predict these risk factors like cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, things like that, because high levels of uric acid can block how insulin sensitive we are, our glucagon response. It has a lot to do as a metabolic hormone. So when that happens and that's too high and it can block other things, then you have other things go wrong in the body. So it's a really cheap and cool marker to follow and can be very predictive, especially when you're looking at an entire risk factor panel. That is one that your PCP should be considering to get.
So quick recap, hydration with sugary drinks is kind of a two-part problem. First, the high sugar concentration increases that osmolality and slows water absorption in the gut. And second, the metabolic processing of large amounts of fructose puts additional stress on both the liver and kidneys, which are organs that are central to fluid balance and lead to some of those long-term conditions as we discussed. So in other words, a sugary drink isn't just water with flavor added. It's just a metabolic load your body has to process before it can actually use the water.
Yeah, no good. Don't make your body work for things like that.
Okay. What about next? So we talked about coffee in the myths. Let's just jump into that. I'm sure that's relevant to one or two of our listeners.
Yeah. It surprises.
Can we also just talk real quick coffee before we jump into it?
I know where you're going to go with this.
Costa Rica?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do it.
So we were in Costa Rica last week. We were in Atenas. Shout out. It was really cool. Yeah. We did a little coffee plantation tour. It was called El Toledo. And it was really cool. I learned a lot about
I learned a lot about coffee. And unfortunately, it was a little bit depressing knowing that we probably still don't know where our coffee comes from. Like it goes back to the point that unless you're literally growing this on your own land and harvesting it yourself, we still don't fully know because regulations can be
Right.
really crappy and it's disheartening. We do our best. We follow the best companies we can get. We use Four Sigmatic Organic. We will never not get organic coffee, but once again,
You still don't know.
you still
Yeah.
don't know. The Purity Coffee is another great brand. They claim that they can test every single batch for not only glyphosate but like bugs and things like that and mold. But here's the thing, you can also do those tests. Like I'm sure that there's kits and stuff that you can swab for glyphosate, but we were talking to them on the tour and it was an organic farmer and we were talking about getting into organic and he's like, what does organic mean to you guys? And of course we chimed in. And, he was very open and honest about the regulations that like they're obviously it's a different country. So when regulators come and kind of test these things, he goes, they come one day a year and we know that the day that they're coming. And if they find something that you don't like, you can just throw them a little money and, they'll be on their way. And I was like, well, do you do that?
Yeah.
And he claims he doesn't, but it just shows
But you don't know. And
you don't know. It just shows you that even the best parts of the world where we can get the most fabulous, amazing coffee, still not.
Yeah. And even if he doesn't,
organic.
he said, there was, I want to say he said 6% of the coffee farms in Costa Rica are organic or claim to be organic. And so when you get organic coffee from Costa Rica, and it's not just Costa Rica, that's just where we were. But Mia's point to anywhere, regulations can be skirted and you just have to be careful.
And it sucks, but do what you can.
All right, we got off topic. So coffee and hydration. Let's get back.
It actually can hydrate you. So to an extent. So like we said, a typical cup of coffee is about 98% of water, so mostly water. And when you drink coffee, you are absolutely taking in, that fluid that your body can use. It's not just wasted. And the old idea is that coffee will dehydrate you, and that's, it's really for people. I almost said patients. It's really for people who aren't drinking coffee regular, where that could be a thing. But if you're drinking coffee on the regular basis, your body is not going to have that massive diuretic property, and I don't think it's really going to be a problem.
I agree.
The confusion comes from the caffeine.
It's from the caffeine.
Yeah.
Right? So we mentioned, and if you go back to our caffeine episode, caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors in the brain, and this actually increases alertness and stimulates the nervous system, makes you feel more alert, aware, think a little bit more clear. And that's why coffee gives you that energizing feeling. But like we said, caffeine has that mild diuretic effect, and that can increase urine production slightly. The way it actually does this, if you're into physiology, is it increases blood flow through the kidneys and reduces how much sodium is reabsorbed in the tubules. So when sodium stays in the urine, water follows it, and that increases urine output.
Yep.
Anyway, like we said, that's really not, that effect is smaller than you think, and you do develop tolerance to it over time. You may notice if you first start drinking coffee, you were peeing all the time or had to pee immediately, and now it definitely doesn't affect my urine, but it still does stimulate me to get a good poop.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's amazing for that for a lot of my patients. They're like, I'm fine as long as I drink my coffee. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to take that from you. I love coffee myself.
So the practicality here is coffee does hydrate you, but again, this shouldn't be your primary source of hydration.
Correct. Yep.
All right. What about milk? That's another one. I have people. Okay. I have to say this though. It absolutely disgusts me to think about those people who just run 8 miles, drip in sweat, take their shirt off, open the refrigerator and just chug 6 ounces of ice cold milk.
Who
and they're
does
like,
that?
it's the greatest thing on earth. Oh my God. There's people who swear by that.
Really?
Yeah. They're mutants.
Well, you can't obviously do that because you'll die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm allergic to whey.
Yeah. That's no good. He would definitely, that would not end well.
Anaphylactic.
Anaphylactic.
It's pretty fun.
It's
There's
an
been some
interesting
cool
trip
episodes.
when that happens.
All right.
We should have an entire episode on all of Tim's anaphylactic responses. My very first witness, I was like, can we just sit in the emergency room parking lot, please? He's like, what are they going to do that I can't? I'm like, I don't know, crike you. Do you got a pen nearby? You want to tell me how you do this before you lose your airway?
It got better with Benadryl.
Yeah. Anyway, that's an entire episode. Anyway, okay, so milk actually hydrates you surprisingly well. In some studies have it shown that it's a higher index or a hydration index than plain water, which is very interesting. And that comes down to the composition of milk. Sure. It's not just water, it's a bunch of things.
It has electrolytes.
Yeah, sodium, potassium, along with protein and carbohydrates.
Right. So those additional nutrients kind of change how it flows through the digestive system. The protein and carbohydrates actually slow down gastric emptying, and meaning the liquid leaves the stomach slower. That's sort of like gastroparesis. And in this case, it's actually a good thing so you can absorb. But at the same time, the sodium and potassium help the body retain water in the bloodstream and tissues instead of quickly excreting it through the kidneys.
Yeah. And we wouldn't be the podcast without saying at least that I do not think that everybody should be just out chugging milk. This comes from our functional medicine background where milk is still, it's for a baby calf. So tread lightly. I'm not against milk. I
Yeah.
still do all of my, my Greek yogurt. My kiddos drink milk here and there. We're not against it in the
No.
right forms. But once
And not
again,
against dairy.
no, we're not against dairy. Once again, though, if you have a sensitivity, meaning if you're an autoimmune patient, if you have some gut dysbiosis, then typically that's one trigger that we can rule out because it does carry a high sensitivity profile for a lot of people. But just that being said, we're not against it. It
Agreed.
has its benefits.
And I mean, like I said, historically, it has been used as a recovery drink after exercise. And while it isn't necessarily thought of as a hydration tool, due to these different electrolytes and ingredients we talked about, it actually does a pretty good job of keeping the body hydrated. So.
Yeah. So speaking of electrolytes, what do those do?
Okay, electrolytes are awesome. I love them. We drink them all the time. They're charged minerals that actually regulate fluid balance and nerve signals at the end of the day. That's what they are.
Yeah. So your main electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium, chloride, calcium, which like Tim said, we drink every single day. And on the days that I'm out sweating, I will double that because I know my body needs it. But then we also put it in our reverse osmosis water. So remember, the carrier can also make a difference with that. Not like your chlorinated city water type thing. But sodium, it controls your...
let's run through them real quick.
Sodium controls your extracellular fluid volume. So low sodium equals, dizziness, fatigue, headaches, no good. And sodium is often a over-restricted, unnecessary... It's over-restricted in a lot of populations when it really shouldn't be. But once again, that's a topic for another day.
Agreed. Yeah, well,
salt
that's the other
intake.
thing, the whole DASH diet and how that's supposed to help with hypertension. But if you look at the data out there, that's a fun one to talk about.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's interesting.
I'm not going to sit here and say, like, if you have cardiovascular disease or chronic medical
don't be
problems that
snorting
you
salt.
should just snort salt. But I will say that some of the regulations are a little bit
chances
ridiculous.
are we can fix your diet without removing salt.
Agreed. Potassium, we mentioned, is another electrolyte. That's your major intracellular. So within the cell electrolyte, it's important for muscle contractions, nerve signaling, blood pressure regulation. Got to have sodium, got to have potassium, magnesium. Important for ATP production, muscle relaxation, nervous system stability.
Bowel health, sleep, recovery. There's over 300 chemical processes that depend on magnesium in your body. Do not skip out on magnesium. I took a long break for it just because I totally forgot about it and I implemented it back into my life again. I love it. It makes me sleep even better. It makes my heart variability better. It makes me recover better. Makes your bowel habits better. Just throw some magnesium in your diet.
Okay, so those are the main ones. Now, real quick, let's talk about this. We did an episode a while back. I used to be like loving to jump and tell people the episode number, but it was like a calorie is not a calorie, right?
Just go listen to them all and find it.
And an electrolyte is not all electrolytes are created equal. So we always tell people, if you're going to use electrolytes, use clean electrolytes. Buy clean electrolytes. What do we mean by that?
Well, I will slap that right out of your hand if I look at it and it has artificial dyes like red 40, blue, yellow. Like, just why? Excess sugar, also no. High fructose corn syrup, heck no. Why are we putting this in our electrolytes? The absolute cleanest that you can get it.
Agreed. And artificial sweeteners. So people are like, no, don't worry. It's the 0-calorie Gatorade or Powerade or whatever. Yeah. Well, it's still got the artificial dyes and it's still got artificial sweeteners. And we've talked about this before. 300 times more potent is sucralose, I think, is 300 times more potent to the body, 300 times sweeter. I can't remember the exact number, but these artificial and alcohol-based artificial sweeteners, they can wreak havoc on your metabolism. Studies clearly show they lead to more obesity due to that high potency sweetness effect. Definitely not good.
Yeah, and we're much more of like the natural ones. So like monk fruit, that's one of our favorites. Stevia, there's hit or miss on that. However, it's still a plant. Like if you guys have ever actually chewed on a stevia leaf, it is ridiculously sweet. Like
Agreed.
That is where my mind goes to when I'm talking about food as medicine, food as how we cook. Like that is less processed. Yes, they have to break it down to get it to where it's going. However, using plants to support us. So that's kind of where we
Agreed.
go to.
And I mean, we use honey to sweeten things. We use organic maple syrup.
Yep.
And so I think the point to understand that is, yes, those have a sugar content, but it's completely different. It's more natural. And I'm not saying I put that in every sweetener. I'm just saying what we use to sweeten things. Or I don't put that in every electrolyte. So,
I don't either. And we will be honest, it is really hard to find some of these clean ingredients out there. There's only clean companies out there. There's only a few. LMNT is a good one.
Yeah.
Honestly, Just Ingredients has become by far my favorite.
I forget. I thought there was something in LMNT that I don't.
Yeah,
that I
well, that's
love.
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like, there's
it's
still
not perfect,
like you can have the cleanest brand possible, and they'll just throw in a dash of something where you're like, why? But sometimes you just can't get by with some of these things.
That LMNT is not
It's not horrific.
It's not horrible, but Pro Mix is pretty good. If you check that one out, that brand's pretty good. Good on ya. I tried that one. It was a lemon one. I'm not gonna lie, it felt very weak. Like I had to use a lot of the powder. So I got Good on ya, and then I like squeezed lemon juice in it, and it was okay. Or you can also just go to, did you mention Just Ingredients?
Yeah,
I
I
like
love
that
them. I
brand.
love them.
But certain ones were hit or miss for me with that too. Paleo Valley has electrolytes. We got the apple cider one, which I didn't love, but those are some
Yeah,
clean
it was like
brands.
spice.
Yeah.
Those are more of like a winter one.
If you guys are wondering, those are some brands.
And you can
Hit
make your
rewind.
own.
Yep.
You can make your own with water, Celtic sea salt, some lime juice. It's just, you can just make your own.
Yes. So you got to remember,
Honey.
good electrolytes are going to have sodium, potassium, magnesium, and little to no sugar. Sodium, potassium, magnesium. So when she's talking about making your own at home water, you get your Celtic sea salt. There's your salt. And then lime juice gives you your potassium, your magnesium, and even calcium. So
yeah, now granted, probably not at these doses that you're getting in a powder, but once again, back to the basics, natural. If you're sipping on some electrolytes all day long, you just can't go wrong.
So some situations in which electrolytes might be helpful just to consider. This one's obvious. All athletes, you're going to lose a lot of sodium and other electrolytes through your sweat. Obviously, you need this back to help maintain your fluid balance.
Sure.
And of course, you don't want to get hyponatremic by just drinking too much fresh water. So
yeah,
electrolytes
you will not
are good.
recover well if you do not rehydrate. And I think every single athlete knows that, and every heavy sweater knows that.
Agree. I was going to say and the same thing as athletes, those heavy sweaters out there, and we have some of those people. If you are sweating a lot, you need to replace your electrolytes.
Yeah.
One you might not think about that could pertain to our audience, though, are low carbohydrate diets. So these low carb and ketogenic diets actually lower the insulin levels, which causes the kidneys to excrete more sodium and water, and making this electrolyte replacement very important to. Can you just take over for me? I'm tired.
Well, I know it's once again, it's almost 10 o'clock, guys. That's what we do.
Making it important to maintain homeostasis.
That's what we do for fun.
Yeah. Anyway,
and
low
fasting.
carbs.
Fasting is another one. My goodness. And people go on like a water fast. That's great. But please, for the love of the Lord's out there, use your electrolytes. But during a fast, insulin drops. The body increases this sodium water excretion through your kidneys. So electrolytes can help maintain this energy, blood pressure, hydration, all the things. So if you're ever thinking about doing a fast, or maybe you have an incredibly busy day or an event, or you're traveling and you know you're not going to get your fluid that you need for the day, bring your electrolytes. When we traveled to Costa Rica, we had a very long travel day. I had my little pack in my book bag, and I brought my thermos. Once I got through the airport, you fill it up, you dump your electrolytes in, you're solid for the rest of the trip, because you know you're not going to get many meals or things like that. So long fasts or longer fasts, make sure you're staying hydrated with your electrolytes.
Yeah, that was really good planning. I was impressed when you pulled out those electrolytes.
And I pulled out some beef sticks.
Yep, you sure did.
Yeah, because the snacks on the plane are just like, do you want diabetes or?
I usually
peanuts.
buy the dehydrated fruit at the airport.
Yeah.
I like to take that on the planes.
Yep. But yeah, and prepare when you travel, like we just did. I had a bag full of beef sticks, dried fruit, electrolytes. I just don't care for the plane food
Except for
anymore.
those Biscoff cookies on the Delta flights.
Yeah,
oh my God, those are so good. I can rat you out
on that one. Well, you dip it in the glyphosate cup of coffee. But
well, that's all they got.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. You got
when
to
in Rome,
pick your poison, man. It's all.
Okay,
is what it
so
is.
This is another one. I bet you people listening to this episode are wondering about high pH water, so your alkaline waters and hydrogen waters. Very big things out there. Let's go through it real quick, but suffice to say, not really much bang for your buck.
No, and I can't even believe there's like straight companies out there that are like, this is the liquid god of water, and I'm like
we'll change your life and make you a million times
$7 for a water bottle that you think it's going to change my life.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So real quick, first let's talk about alkaline or high pH water for a second, and I think I'm going to have you take it so I can clear my throat.
Okay. All right. So your body already regulates blood pH extremely tightly. Remember, maintaining that homeostasis, and your blood normally stays between the 7.35 and 7.45 for the pH. And if it moves outside of this range, even just a little, let me repeat that, multiple systems will immediately start to come in and correct, like your lungs and kidneys and exchange. This, all of my emergency room people know exactly what I'm talking about. When you have somebody who is metabolically in trouble, the respiratory therapist can change vent settings because of lungs and how you excrete different things. Your body is just incredible.
It's on top of it.
Cannot
is the
even
best
get
way
over,
to say it.
Cannot even
it
get
wants
over
to
how
keep
cool our
a
body
very
is.
fine pH of 7.4, and it will aggressively attack things that want to change it.
It'll be like, not today. I'm staying in this with range, and I will literally die if I come out of this range for a long period of time.
Right. And the second issue is when you drink this alkaline water, the first place it goes is your stomach.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We just said the pH of the bloodstream is 7.4. What's the pH of the stomach?
1 to 2.
Right, 1 to 2.
Very, very low. significantly lower. And that acid is incredibly strong. It's strong enough to neutralize most alkaline water.
Yeah, what happens when you mix the acid in the
it's like,
it's going to want to neutralize.
Let's pour some water in it. It's diluted acid, but it's still mostly acidic.
So I don't think that alkaline water, has much effect on the body's overall pH balance at all.
And maybe we eventually can have a guest in the podcast that proves
maybe they'll tell us some reasons why. And I've heard other things, and I can't quote it, but I've heard people tell me why that stuff doesn't hold up and stuff.
We've actually had some guests at seminars that we've listened to, but
Point is, I don't think it'll hurt you though. If you want to drink it, go ahead, but I wouldn't call it a miracle.
I wouldn't go out of your way and waste more money for that. So let's talk about hydrogen water as well. This was just a little bit different. Hydrogen water has more of a molecular hydrogen gas, H2, and that's like dissolved into it. So some research think that hydrogen molecules might act as a selective antioxidant, meaning that they might actually help neutralize certain reactive oxygen species and reduce oxidative stress.
And the ones they say that they target are like the superoxide dismutase. The other ones that are whatever ones are like super aggressive and potent, oxidating molecules. So it's like supposed to go after the real bad guys,
the aggressors.
Yeah. And that's actually, I think that's proven to be somewhat true. The problem is just getting the hydrogen to where it can do that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it happens with water personally.
Yeah. And some of these studies are suggesting potential benefits, like Tim said, anti-inflammatory recovery, oxidative stress, but the evidence is still early, limited, inconsistent, and we don't really have any like major strong clinical data to back this up. But
well, and real quick,
better than pop.
Yeah. And just real quick, when the part of the other reasons it doesn't work is because when you actually open and start to drink hydrogen water, hydrogen is like the smallest and lightest molecule in the universe. So it immediately starts to dissipate out of the water, as you're drinking the bottle. So, even just leaving it open to the air and stuff, you're going to lose some of the hydrogen.
So you're saying open it up and chug it.
Yeah, basically that for your best chance, just absolutely chug it.
Take it to the face.
And then even what remains in the water, though, when you chug it, only a fraction actually gets absorbed through the intestines and make it to the bloodstream. So who knows? It's a crapshoot.
Yeah, who knows? That's the end of the day. Who knows? All right, so why quality matters? Well, tap water, don't even get me started on tap water, ewg.org, is that right?
IWG? EWG. EWG.org.
EWG.org. That'll change your life. You will put in that into the
put your zip code.
Yeah, put in your zip code, and it'll tell you all of the horrific contaminants that the city allows into your water. And it's not just like 1 times the recommended amount. No, we're talking like
400 times.
200, 400 times of bromium in lithium and all these things where you're like, how is this even legal? And it'll actually even tell you, like, by the way, this is at a significant cancer potential risk. And it's just wild. So if you have tap water, type that into your website, see what you're drinking, and then don't drink it, because there has not been a city that I have searched that hasn't been significantly contaminated where I'm so grossed out I don't want to ever consume tap water.
Yeah, totally agree. So real quick, while we were talking, Toledo? I did Toledo, Ohio, which is where we live close to. Real quick, chloroform. Yeah, let's play a quick game. How many times the recommended amount do you think has been found in Toledo city water?
42.
62 times.
Dang it. It went up since the last time I looked.
Haloacetic acids, 255 times. Trihalomethanes, 282 times. Bromodichloromethane, it's a big one, 167 times.
Yeah, these sound like chemicals that can fuel your car to survive.
And all of them, there's no legal limit. Yeah. There's only recommended amounts that we should be exposed to. So there's really not anything. Chromium, 11 times. Anyway, I won't keep going into it. And this is not to pick on Toledo. Put in any city.
No, it's not. No, everybody's water is just as crappy. Yeah, FYI, tap water. Mind you that the majority of medication in tap water is birth control and statins. So there's that. And that's just the toxins. That doesn't even go into the medicines that are dumped down the toilet and in our water table.
Yeah, wonderful. So tap water,
clear your freaking water, or else you're drinking disgustingness.
And then also, we didn't even mention chlorine, fluoride, PFAS, your forever chemicals and stuff. So just think about that.
Heavy metals, pesticides, all things.
Filtering water is reasonable and recommended. If all you can do is a carbon filter, start there.
Highly recommended.
Britas have upped their game with what their carbon filters can do, and similar. I use Brita interchangeably for some of these carbon filters. They have upped their game. They're not perfect. You should definitely try to get reverse osmosis if you can.
We use AquaTrue. You have an under-the-counter station. You have a countertop station. It's read up about them. It's significant.
But if you can't, just get a Brita. Just filter something.
Yeah,
filter what you can.
Anything.
Quick point. we've mentioned it a few times. If you do have reverse osmosis, don't forget to either buy something that puts minerals back in the water or mineralize your water yourself.
Yep. And that goes right down to that concentration of your cellular function.
You can use electrolyte drops or trace mineral solutions, or even just honestly good old fashioned salt if you have reverse osmosis and it doesn't put minerals back in the water.
Yep. All right, well, let's do just a quick summary here. Basic daily baseline. So remember, about half your body weight in ounces a day of water. Example, if you're 200 pounds, you're drinking 100 ounces of water. Especially if you're sweating in hot environment, high altitude, exercising, sauna, you're going to be more than that. Like, listen to your body. If you know you're going to be a vigorous activity, increase that. Signs you're hydrated: your urine is a light yellow, you have steady energy, no brain fog, minimal thirst cues, and then good exercise tolerance and good exercise recovery, meaning you feel good during your exercise and you don't feel like you can take a 6-hour nap after your exercise.
Yeah, some simple hydration strategies. I'm really a fan of trying to stay on it throughout the day rather than relying on big boluses. Yeah. Some people tell me I don't drink anything till noon and then I drink 40, 50 ounces of water.
I'm a big fan of hitting in the morning.
Yeah, get started. Try to get a good 20 ounces of water. Right. Yeah. Try to start your day.
Putting a fresh tank of gas in your car in the morning. Like, just start the day right. If you're like, that's just how I think. Steady intake. No, like Tim said, no need for like large boluses unless you're like obviously sweating your butt off during a sport activity. But you don't need to like large bolus yourself. It can make a difference to just be steady throughout the day. Makes a difference.
And don't get, if you're doing electrolytes, remember to stay with the cleaner versions, which we described earlier in this episode. But the big takeaway there is avoid your sugars, your dyes, your artificial sweeteners. And what was the last section to recap? Sorry. The filters.
Yeah, the filters, filtering your water.
And coffee's not bad, but it shouldn't be your only hydration source.
And you should also buy organic when you can, even though, what the heck does that even mean?
Yep.
Unfortunately, Costa Rica kind of ruined that for us.
Okay, this wasn't as short as I thought, but I think this was a good episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, learned something about hydration, and have something to share with a friend. Remember to check out our website, rixahealth.com. We have tons of cool stuff on there, blogs. You can see all of our previous podcasts. Yep. And we also have a store. You can get some clean supplements if needed. We might be having something new coming soon.
We're trying to launch some other things to be determined, but we have our shop that's up and running. We have our whey and our creatine powder and magnesium and collagen peptides with multi-source, plant-based protein, all the things. Blood support for all my anemic and low ferritin people, which of low ferritin is an entire, that's multiple podcasts we need to do on that one, but lots of good things. So check us out, like, share, follow. If this resonates with you, share it with a friend, anybody who drinks water, just anybody.
Awesome. This podcast is for education and conversation, not medical advice. It's not a replacement for personalized care, diagnosis, or treatment. Always talk with your own healthcare provider before making changes to your health, medications, or lifestyle. Our goal is to give you better questions, better understanding of disease, and more ownership of your health. Knowledge is power. We try to give you the knowledge so you have the power.
We'll see you next week, guys. Hopefully not at 10 o'clock at night.
See ya.